Hello, and welcome to today's Lunch with Mia, College Students and Insurance. My name is Kiana Walton, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Now, back to school time can be a challenging time for parents and students, especially for those families that will have children starting college. Whether the student is going in-state or out-of-state, there are things that parents and college students need to know to help prepare for college, especially when it comes to your insurance. Before we get started, we would like to do a quick poll to see how we all got here today. If you do not see the poll, you can just enter how you heard about today's event in the chat box. Okay, it looks like we all got here today by email, so thank you for joining us. So before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded. Please leave phones and computers on mute for this event. If you are not presenting, please keep your camera off. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will address your questions at the end. Please make sure that when you do put your question in the chat box, that you have it directed to everyone. So now we're going to get started today with a video about back to school.
Fall is almost here, and that means back to school for many college and university students. It's been a lovely summer, and we're all looking forward to a fresh new school year. So parents, and you amazing college students who tackle these matters on your own, let's talk about insurance. Let's start with health insurance. There are a few options for college students looking to buy health insurance. You may be able to buy it from your school. If so, it'll likely be billed to you with fees and tuition. That's a great solution for many students, but if it's not the solution for you, make sure you are not paying for it. Some colleges and universities require you to opt out of the health insurance they provide, so just be sure to look carefully at any receipts you receive from the school. If you are covered as a dependent under your parents' or other guardian's health benefit plan, you may be eligible to continue this coverage until age 26. It's a good idea to contact the health insurance carrier to find out if your plan will cover services in your school's area and if there are any additional requirements to ensure coverage. If you are employed, your employer may offer health insurance. If you recently left your job, you may be eligible for continued coverage under your old employer's health benefit plan under COBRA, a federal law. For more information, contact your employer or the health insurance carrier. You may also want to buy a policy from the Maryland Health Connection or the exchange that is operated in the state where your school is located. As a college student, it's likely you qualify for significant subsidies, meaning you pay very little for your plan. The Maryland Health Connection can also help determine if you qualify for Medicaid. Contact the Maryland Health Connection at 888-642-8572 for information on an individual policy and Medicaid enrollment. Next up, let's talk about housing. Maybe you will be living in a dorm or an apartment with a few friends. Wherever it is, you'll probably have a laptop, furniture, various electronics, and maybe a bicycle or other equipment for outdoor activities. If a college student will be living off campus in a rented apartment or house, it's important to understand that the insurance policy the landlord carries for the rental property will not cover the student's personal property, such as the laptop, clothing, and other things he or she brought to school. The student will need their own insurance, called a renter's insurance policy. Renter's insurance protects the student financially if their personal property is damaged or stolen as a result of a covered loss, such as a fire or theft. It also helps protect the student financially if someone is injured by the student's property and seeks damages. However, If the student is living in on-campus or school-owned housing, their belongings may be covered under a parent's homeowner's insurance policy, depending upon the terms of the policy. It is a good idea to check with the parent's homeowner's insurer or insurance producer, agent, or broker to find out if the policy will cover the student's personal property while away at school. If not, you may want to consider purchasing a renter's insurance policy since the school's insurance for the dorm will likely not cover your personal belongings. When making decisions about insurance, there are some things you should know. First up is that whether the student has renter's insurance or relies on the parent's homeowner's policy, the policy will only provide coverage in the event of a covered loss, and the terms of coverage depends upon the language of the policy. The amount of coverage also varies from policy to policy and will depend upon the policy limits and deductibles you select at the time you purchase the policy. If you have questions about what the policy may cover, ask the insurer or insurance producer before making your decision. Also, when purchasing your policy, you will need to estimate the value of your personal possessions to decide how much insurance you need. One last note. Burglaries are, unfortunately, a common campus crime. Since insurance may not cover the full cost of any losses or damages to personal property, students may want to consider leaving valuable items at home, especially if the personal property has sentimental value. Next up, auto insurance. Having a car at school comes with responsibilities. First off, for students with a car at school, tell the insurer where the car is being parked. Generally, an insurer is required to notify the insurer whenever there is a policy change, including, for example, where the insured car is garaged. Also, minimum coverage levels can vary by state, and it's important to comply with the coverage minimums in your state. Maryland requires vehicle owners to carry a minimum amount of liability coverage, which pays up to the policy limits and less any deductible for damages and injuries to someone else if you are found responsible for an accident you did not intentionally cause. Maryland also requires insurers to offer personal injury protection, Pip Coverage. It is always a good idea to check with your insurer or insurance producer to see if you have enough coverage. If you want insurance to cover damages to your car from an accident, or, for example, a deer running into it, you will need comprehensive and collision coverage. Collision coverage covers the cost of damages caused when you hit something, another vehicle collides with yours, or an object hits the car while you are driving it. Comprehensive coverage is for just about everything else, including, for example, if you hit a deer while driving. Although these types of coverages are not required under Maryland law, it is a good idea to consider purchasing each since they offer financial protection. Another factor to consider is who is the legal owner of the car. If the student's car is titled in a parent's name, the parent will likely need to insure the vehicle, not the student. But the student may be able to stay on the parent's insurance policy as a listed named driver. Contact the insurer or insurance producer to find out the details. It is a good idea to do this well before the school year starts in case you need to make changes to the vehicle registration or policy or shop for another policy. Keeping a clean driving record can also make a difference when insuring a student's automobile. Drivers with accidents and moving violations generally pay more for insurance, and young people already face high insurance rates due to inexperience. Remember, if a student is insured under a parent's auto insurance policy, the student's driving record may also affect their parents' insurance rates. If you are a student and plan to buy or lease a car, it is a good idea to choose carefully. Certain vehicles cost more to insure, and you have your whole life ahead of you to get that cute sports car. Last 2 auto insurance tips. Keep a good credit rating. Pay your bills on time and don't go crazy with the credit card, since your credit score can affect your premium rate when you buy a new policy. And students, keep those grades up. Many insurers offer a discount if you keep up a B or better average. Parents and college students, I hope this answered some questions for you today. We have many other videos on our YouTube page, some that take a deeper dive into the topics covered today, and we encourage you to visit. Any questions, you can always contact us via phone at 800-492-6116 or even snail mail at 200 St. Paul Place, Suite 2700, Baltimore, Maryland 21202. Check out our website at www.insurance.maryland.gov, and don't forget our social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Thanks for watching.
Now we're going to start getting into the meat of each topic for our college students and insurance. First up, we have Patricia Dorn, who will talk to us about renters' considerations for young adults. Thank you, Patty.
Thanks, Kiana. So I think that video did a good job of summarizing a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Joyce, if you could put the link to that video in the chat, I do, in case you want to share it, etc. Those of you that are joining us today. And so I'm going to review some of what we talked about in the video, and go into a little bit more detail on some other things. Next slide. So what is renters insurance? As we said in the video, college students should think about where they're going to be living, a dorm, apartment, wherever it is. They're likely to have a lot of things, have a lot of belongings, laptops, furniture, various electronics, etc. Next slide. And so in general, the items that you keep in a rented apartment, a house, or a dorm room, they're generally not protected against loss unless you have a renter's insurance policy. Next slide. So, however, if you are a student living in on-campus or school-owned housing, your belongings might be covered under a parent's homeowner's policy. So parents, your students' items that they bring to college might be covered, but you need to check the terms of your policy. It's a good idea to find out if those things are covered. Next slide. So what does a renter's insurance policy cover? It covers loss or damage to household contents or personal possessions. So anything from electronics to clothing to household appliances. A minimal number of items can add up to thousands of dollars worth of personal property, which can be covered under a basic renter's insurance policy. And many policies do not limit protection to the belongings located in your home or apartment. For example, items you have insured often are covered if they are stolen by someone who breaks into your car, or if they're damaged by a covered peril while not on your property. Next slide. Additional living expenses in the event of a covered loss that makes your home, apartment, or condo uninhabitable. So if you have to live somewhere else because there has been damage, if there's damage to that building that you're renting or living in and you need to live somewhere else, while you relocate, you will generally have coverage for those additional living expenses. So you would still be paying the rent, etc., but you might incur additional living expenses, say because you had to stay in a hotel for a few weeks, or because you had to get an apartment for a few months. And so those are generally covered under additional living expenses, part of renter's insurance. You will also receive liability coverage for injuries to others and or their property that's caused by your negligence, and medical payments coverage for others that are hurt while on your property, even if you're not at fault. So the renter's insurance policy usually covers your personal property and your personal legal responsibility or liability for injuries to others or damage to their personal property. So what perils are covered under your renter's policy? When you're shopping for renter's insurance, it's important that you understand what perils are covered under your policy. Perils are the risks, such as fire, wind, hail, theft, vandalism. So some policies cover multiple perils, so many perils, while some policies sometimes cover only one very specific peril. So if your home is damaged by a peril that's not named in the policy, So if your home is damaged by hail and that is not named in the policy, and somehow that it damages your items as well, then the damage isn't covered. So the damage that's covered is caused by the perils that are listed or named in your policy. So for example, in this example, the policy says it only covers damage caused by fire. So fire only policy, but then you have wind damage, then your damage will not be covered. A policy that covers only one peril will likely be less expensive. So that makes sense. It only covers one thing. It's likely to cost less, but it's essential that you understand the limitations of the policy. So just make sure that you've looked at those perils, you understand what perils are covered, and that you understand the limitations of your own renter's insurance policy. Next slide. So although a policy that only covers one peril may cost less upfront and likely will, it may not provide sufficient coverage. And an example that we have is a number of apartments in Baltimore City that were damaged by a windstorm, and many of the tenants in the apartment complex carried what was a fire only renter's insurance policy. So as a result, their belongings were destroyed by a windstorm and they didn't have coverage under that fire only renter's insurance policy. If you are interested in purchasing renter's insurance, how much you purchase is going to depend on the value of your personal property. So how much stuff do I have and how much is it worth? You need to essentially make an inventory of your personal property and determine the value. We have a video, we're not going to show it today, but we have a video on our YouTube page. So the same place you'll find that other video, creating a home inventory. And that helps you through step-by-step how to get started with creating a home inventory. So number one, yeah, it's important to have a home inventory to decide how much renter's insurance do I need? Okay, is this $10,000 worth of belongings, 20,000? What do I need? But it's also important if you have a claim in the future, because perhaps you're purchasing $50,000 of renter's insurance for your belongings. Okay, so that does not mean that the insurance company is going to write you out a check for $50,000 if you have a loss. You're going to have to justify to the insurance company what you owned, and you're going to do this in the form of a home inventory. You can go through your house, you can take pictures, you can take videos, you can list things. The video is really helpful in stepping you through the process step by step. But here, group items together in logical categories, room by room, you could do that. Don't forget about your rarely used items. So things in your closet, things that you store under your bed, etc. You're paying for the insurance for that. You would want to get these things replaced. Photograph or videotape each room, and then store this home inventory, sales receipts, etc., in a safe place, such as in the cloud, a fireproof box, or a safe deposit box. So an updated inventory can make it easier to file an accurate and detailed insurance claim in case your personal property is damaged or destroyed by a covered loss. All right, another thing that's important to understand with renter's insurance, actual cash value and replacement cost value. You're going to have two options. With an actual cash value policy, or ACV, this coverage provides you with the cost to replace your personal property up to the limit of your policy minus depreciation for age and condition. So actual cash value is going to depreciate for age and condition. So for example, like this chair that I bought at the beginning of the pandemic for approximately $200, it's going to be depreciated. So if I have an actual cash value policy, the value is going to be depreciated and I'm going to get less than, I've had it for 2 years, I'm going to get less than $200. With a replacement cost value, an RCV policy, this coverage provides you with the cost of replacing the damaged or destroyed property up to the policy limits, but without the deduction for depreciation. So in this case, all right, I found, I bought this at an office supply store and I paid $200 for it 2 years ago, and now it's $240. So with replacement cost value, they're going to replace it new. They're going to replace it for the $240 essentially that it costs now. Both of these policies are available to you when you're purchasing renter's insurance. You just have to decide which one makes the most sense for you. So that's the difference between ACV and RCV. A next frequently asked question: when I was a homeowner, my policy didn't cover damage that was caused by earthquake or flood. Is this the same with a renter's insurance policy? Yes, damage from earthquakes or flood are generally not covered under a renter's policy. They may be available to you as separate policies. And at the bottom of this page, there is information about understanding your own risk of flood. And that can be found at www.floodsmart.gov. So how much does renter's insurance cost? So the actual cost depends upon the amount of coverage you want, right? So if you're looking for $10,000 worth of coverage, obviously it's going to be a lot less than if you need $150,000 worth of coverage. You have a lot of stuff. But on average, it's going to cost you between $15 and $30 per month. And obviously replacing all your possessions and especially being liable for an accident on your premises could cost you a lot more. There are discounts available. Insurers will often reduce your premium if you have fire, burglar alarms, fire extinguishers, sprinkler systems, deadbolts, and some insurers offer discounts if you have more than one policy with them. Property damage liability waiver. So your property management company or your landlord may require that you purchase something called a property damage liability waiver, a PDLW, or they may include that fee as part of your rent. It's important that you know that a PDLW is not renter's insurance, and it typically will not cover any of your belongings. The PDLW generally only covers damage to the building and may only apply to certain types of events, those perils such as fire, smoke, explosion, or leaking water. So in that case, you are essentially protecting yourself in case you cause damage to the building itself, but you're not getting any protection for the items that you own. And now I'm going to show you our rate guide. We do have a renter's insurance rate guide. We believe that comparison shopping is the key to getting the most out of your insurance dollar. It's easy not to comparison shop. It's easy to stay with the same company year after year, but it isn't recommended. It is important that you do shop around. Even if you've had renter's insurance for a while, it's a good idea to go out and see if you can get a better rate with somebody else, and the same with other kinds of insurance as well. So tips for getting the most out of insurance shopping: make sure that you provide the same information to each insurer. So keep track of that. If you're saying you want $50,000 worth of coverage for the first insurer that you called, make sure it's $50,000 for the next. $1,000 deductible, if that's what you choose, make sure it's $1,000 deductible when you get your next quote. You want to get that apples to apples comparison. We do recommend writing it down, keeping track of it. Ask about the discounts, ask about the deductibles, and when they apply, understand your deductibles, understand what's covered, understand what's excluded. You might want to consider other factors such as the coverage limits and customer service, and you might want to talk to friends and neighbors about their experiences with different insurance. So I'm going to show you just really the cover of our rate guide. Next slide. This is our rate guide. This is the cover of it. You can find it online. You can call us and we can snail mail you out a copy of it as well. And also, if you see us at an event, if you see us at a library, if you see us out in public, oftentimes we do have copies of these rate guides with us as well. And so you can always call and request. In here, you're going to see approximately 50 insurers that are offering renters insurance in Maryland. And it is organized by county or Baltimore City where you live. And so you're going to see approximately 50 companies and their different rates. And it's a really great place to start shopping for renters insurance. It's also a great place to shop if you've had renters insurance for a while and you want to shop around and see if you can get a better rate with somebody else. Kiana just linked the rate guide in the chat. So if you want to grab that, that is available. You can also call us at 1-800-492-6116. 1-800-492-6116 if you want to get a copy. And then the insurance phone numbers and their websites are all available at the back of the book. All right, so Mary Jo, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to be going over some information about auto insurance. So first, let's ask, what is auto insurance? Auto insurance is a contract between you and the insurer that protects you against financial loss. In exchange for you paying a premium, the insurer agrees to pay for certain covered losses as described in your policy. Next slide, please. First thing we want to talk about is liability insurance. Liability insurance protects the policyholder and any insureds when they cause an accident. And liability insurance, there's two different coverages. The first coverage is the bodily injury liability coverage. And again, this protects you if you or the driver of your car causes an accident, an injured person makes a claim or files a lawsuit against you. Now, if that driver of your car is excluded or does not have a reasonable belief they are entitled to drive your vehicle, and they cause an accident and injure someone, then the insurance company will not provide liability coverage for that excluded operator. So if someone takes your car without permission, your car is stolen, someone is specifically excluded under your policy, they will not be protected. The next is property damage liability coverage. This again protects you or the driver of your car when they cause an accident that results in damage to someone else's property. And that can be another car. It could be a fence, a guardrail, a utility pole. And again, as long as it is not an excluded driver and it is someone that has a reasonable belief they are entitled to drive your car. Next slide. In Maryland, it is required that you carry liability coverage in order to obtain tags for your vehicle. Now, Maryland law has a minimum requirement for the amount of liability coverage you carry. For bodily injury, it is $30,000 per person, $60,000 per accident. So if two or more people are injured, the most that the insurer will pay is a total of $60,000. So if there's 5 people injured, the most they'll pay for all 5 is $60,000. And the property damage limit is $15,000. Now, I do want to stress that if the damages exceed these minimum amounts, you individually can be held responsible. These are the limits of coverage, the most your insurance company will pay. And if the amounts of damage or the injury amounts exceed these, you will be and may be personally held liable for those damages. Next slide. Another coverage that is going to be mandatory under your auto insurance coverage that's required by Maryland law is what's called uninsured motorist coverage. Now, uninsured motorist coverage is the coverage that will protect you and your property if your vehicle is damaged or you are injured as a result of the carelessness of an uninsured driver. So that is someone that does not have either liability insurance or not enough liability insurance. And it can also be for a hit and run driver. So for instance, you have a new car and your car is worth $25,000. You were in an accident and the person that caused the accident, and they must be 100% at fault, they only carry $15,000. That would be covered, and they do have insurance. Then the $15,000 would be paid by their insurance company. And if you carried more than $15,000, so let's say you carried $50,000 in property damage, $15,000 would come from the person that caused the accident, and the other $10,000 to equal the $25,000 your car is worth would come from your insurance company. So it protects you and your property and covers your injuries if you're involved with either an uninsured or an underinsured motorist. Next slide. So sometimes we get asked, what happens if you have a lapse in your auto insurance coverage? Again, Maryland law requires that you maintain the required minimum coverage at all times while your vehicle is registered. The Motor Vehicle Administration will assess a penalty for every day that you do not maintain minimum coverage. So if your policy cancels, say for non-payment, your insurer will notify the Motor Vehicle Administration that your policy is no longer in force, and the Motor Vehicle Administration will send you a request to update. So if you've switched companies, if you haven't switched companies, you will be assessed a fine. There is a link here, and maybe Kiana can put that in the chat for further information about that. But I believe right now the fine is $150 for the first 30 days of no coverage and $7 a day thereafter the first $30 or 30 days. Next slide. There are other coverages that are most times optional. One of those is collision coverage, and it is an optional coverage that you purchase to provide payment for property damage to your vehicle from a collision with another vehicle or an object. If you are in an accident, you have collision coverage, your insurer will pay to repair your vehicle or pay what your vehicle was worth if it's a total loss. And they would calculate that on the value of the vehicle the moment before the accident occurs. And that would be subject to your deductible. The other coverage that's optional is comprehensive. This pays for damage to your car resulting from causes other than a collision, like theft, vandalism, or storm damage. We've had a lot of storms lately, and trees fall onto cars, causing damage or totaling vehicles. If you have comprehensive coverage, that storm damage is covered. Now, again, these coverages generally have a deductible. The larger, higher your deductible is, the lower your premium. So that's the portion of that loss you agree to basically self-insure. Next slide. So let's go into comprehensive coverage a little bit more. When it comes to auto insurance, comprehensive coverage provides you the coverage for property damage to your insured vehicle resulting from occurrences other than collision. So that is, again, flooding, theft, vandalism, glass breakage not resulting from an accident, or a vehicle striking an animal. Now, we also want to go over something called personal injury protection, or PIP. This provides reimbursement for medical expenses arising from a motor vehicle accident for injuries to you, your passengers, or a pedestrian struck by your vehicle. It will cover lost wages and other related expenses arising from a motor vehicle accident. Maryland law requires insurers to offer policyholders at least $2,500 in PIP. You may elect to purchase limited PIP, and certain individuals may be able to fully reject PIP. So let me explain that a little bit. When you take out your insurance policy, you will have, in most cases, the option to purchase what's called full PIP, or to opt out of full PIP and accept limited PIP. Limited PIP means that anyone under the age of 16 is covered by PIP for medical expenses up to the amount of the PIP coverage. However, you, the owner of the vehicle, the policyholder, and adults in your vehicle over the age of 16 and over will not be covered. Now, you will look at your policy and your declarations page, and you will see an amount of PIP. But again, that's for the limited PIP that will cover children and their medical expenses. So when you first take out your policy, you have to affirmatively, what means sign, to accept either full PIP or limited PIP. And that waiver will explain to you the costs of the full PIP and the limited PIP. If you do not sign that waiver, you will automatically be given full PIP coverage and will be charged that higher premium. If at some point you decide you had selected the limited PIP and you want to go back and get full PIP, you will again have to actually sign the document saying that you are now selecting the full PIP. Next slide. So oftentimes we get a lot of questions about how an insurance company develops the premiums that they charge. There is a wide variety of criteria considered when an insurer is calculating your premium. And what they're doing is predicting the likelihood you will be in an accident or file a claim. Now, we do have a video on our YouTube page that goes into how does an auto insurer determine your premium. We won't be looking at that video, but perhaps Kiana can include that link in the chat as well. But I will go over a few of those criteria. First is age. Oftentimes people understand that teenagers pay the most for insurance. Gender, and that can be whether you're male or female. And we all it's kind of generally known that a teenage boy, a young male, is one of the more expensive people to insure because the risk is there that it is likely that they would present and have an accident. So they are oftentimes charged a higher premium. Marital status, number of miles driven annually, driving record. Do you have accidents, tickets? That will be considered. Credit history. If you have a poor credit score, an insurer may not use that to deny you coverage, but they can use it to calculate premium, which may be higher than someone with a better credit score. If your premium is impacted by a poor credit history, the insurer must notify you, and they must review that every 2 years. If your credit history improves, then they must recalculate your premium, giving you, recalculating it with a better credit history, which will potentially decrease your premium. If your credit history worsens, they cannot change it to give you a higher premium, only if your credit history improved. So it's important to pay bills and to protect your credit history. Purpose, the vehicle is being driven. If you are using it occasionally to go to the store, to go to church, to go to the doctors, perhaps you're retired, or you have a second vehicle that you only use occasionally on the weekends, that's going to be a lower premium than a vehicle that is driven back and forth to school or work on a regular basis. The longer your commute is can impact your premiums. And if you are using your vehicle for commercial or business purposes, it is important to let your insurer know that, because if you don't and you have an accident, you may not have coverage. So if you're using the vehicle to deliver goods, food, or you're giving rides for a fee, you want to make sure you notify your insurer. Although it will cause your premiums to be increased, you will be protected in the event of an accident. The location where the vehicle is garaged. So again, if you are taking a vehicle with you to college and you're parking it at college, it's important to update your insurance company and let them know that you will be taking that vehicle with you when you attend college. Driving experience. So if you've been driving for a few years, you're going to get a better rate than a brand new driver. And again, claims history. Have you had a lot of claims? Have you submitted a lot of claims? Had a number of accidents? That again can impact the amount of premium you're charged. Next slide. Comparison shop. So we encourage people to shop, to look to see if you can obtain those coverages from a different insurer at a lower cost. So again, when you're shopping, same as Patty talked about in the renter's insurance, make sure you're comparing policies that offer the same coverages with the same deductibles and the coverage limits. You want to compare apples to apples. Make sure the information you provide to the insurer is accurate and that you provide the same information to each insurer you call. Also, ask about deductibles and when they apply. Next slide. Just as with renter's insurance, we have a rate guide for auto insurance. This is available on our website. And the rate guide will have a number of sample scenarios. And there are approximately 50 insurance companies listed in the rate guide. The rate guide is available on our website. You can call us at 1-800-492-6116 to request a copy. Now, we do update this twice a year. We just updated it again this August. So besides the rate guide, which you can use, and again, it's broken down by sample scenarios and zip codes. If you visit our website, we do have an interactive rate guide that you can use to compare, again, those apples to apples comparisons with a list of companies to give you some starting points when you are shopping. And again, in the back of the rate guide are the telephone numbers and websites for all the companies included. Next slide. So again, some considerations for young adults and college students. For you college students, you have a car at school, make sure the insurer knows where the car is parked. Generally, an insured is required to notify the insurer whenever there is a change in the policy information, which includes where the insured car is garaged, where it's kept. Also, different states have different levels of minimum coverage, and it's important that you check the coverage minimums in the state you are living. Now, some Maryland insurance policies we'll do what we call broaden. So if you have the car at college in a state other than Maryland, and that state requires higher limits, your policy may broaden to meet those higher limits, but it is important to check with your insurance agent or broker or the insurance company to make certain that your policy will do that. And if not, you may want to increase your coverages to make sure you are adequately covered in the state where the car is being kept. Another factor that you must consider is who is the legal owner of the car. If the car is titled in a parent's name, the parent will likely need to insure the vehicle. You may be able to stay on your parent's insurance policy as a listed named driver, an insured driver. Again, contact your insurer or your insurance producer to find out the details and discuss your options. Keep a clean driving record, and that can make a big difference in your rates. Drivers with accidents and moving violations generally pay more for insurance. And young people already face high insurance rates due to inexperience. So remember, if you are an insured under your parents' auto insurance policy, your driving record may also affect your parents' insurance rates. Another thing to think about when we say moving violations, but there can be other types of violations, such as not wearing seatbelts or using handheld devices while driving, can impact your premium as well. So again, make sure you buckle up and do not use those cell phones and handheld devices while driving. Next slide. If you are a student and plan to buy or lease your own car, it's a good idea to choose carefully. Certain vehicles cost more to insure. High performance vehicles, more expensive vehicles are going to cost more to insure. Ask your insurer whether there are any discounts that might be available to you, such as good driver discounts, multi-policy discounts, multi-vehicle discounts, protective devices such as airbags. Now, not all insurers offer the same discounts. Again, it's something you need to ask. Last two tips. Keep a good credit rating. Pay your bills on time. And don't go crazy with that new credit card while you're away at school, because your credit score is going to affect your premium, either now if you are still on your parents' policy or when you buy your own policy. And keep up those grades. Most insurers offer a discount. You keep a B or better average, 3.0. That shows you are a responsible young adult, and insurance companies will take that into consideration when they're calculating the risk, and that results in calculating your premium.
All right, thank you, Mary Jo. And our last presentation again will be from Patricia Dorn about health insurance for young adults.
Thanks, Kiana. Great information, Mary Jo. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because this is information that was covered in the video. So health insurance for young adults, for college students. It may be available for you to purchase from the college or university, as we talked about in the video. If so, it'll likely be billed to you with your fees and tuition. But if you don't need that health insurance through your school, through your college or university, make sure that you're not paying for it. You may need to opt out. Make sure that you look carefully at your tuition statements or any receipts. Next slide. So if you are covered as a dependent under your parents' or other guardian's health benefit plan, you might be able to continue that coverage until age 26. You need to contact the health insurance carrier, find out if your plan will cover services in the area where you're going to be attending school, and then if there are any additional steps that you need to take to ensure coverage. Next slide. If you're employed, you may be able to obtain health insurance through your employer. And if you recently left your job, you might be eligible for continued coverage through COBRA. And in that case, you're going to contact your employer or your health insurance carrier for more information. And you may also want to buy a policy from the Maryland Health Connection or the exchange that is operated in the state that you are living in. You may qualify for significant subsidies, meaning that you may pay very little or close to nothing for your plan. The Maryland Health Connection can also help you determine if you qualify for Medicaid. So you can contact them at 888-642-8572 for information on an individual policy and also information about Medicaid enrollment. And Kiana just put some additional information, the link in the chat as well. Is there a next slide? Okay.
Thank you, Patty. So just to let you know, I did put some links in the chat box. I put the home inventory, the back to school video that we watched earlier, also the renter's rate guide and the auto interactive rate guide. So we have a new interactive rate guide for auto insurance on our website, and I put that link in the chat box for you. Also penalties if you do not have auto insurance, just more information. Also understanding Pip insurance, so you'll have more information about that as well. And then for health insurance, I just put information about dependent health coverage up to age 26. So we are at the end of our webinar. And if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat box and I will direct the questions to the appropriate person. And we'll just wait a second to see if there's any questions. Okay, well, it looks like there are no questions. I want to thank everyone for attending today's event. To help us evaluate the quality and the content of today's event, it would be helpful if you could please click on the link in the chat and fill out a brief survey. Again, any information will be helpful. And we will have our next lunch with Mia next month, which would be September 8th. And we will be discussing disaster preparedness. You can also visit our website for more information, as well as upcoming events that we will be attending. And you can find that on our website, www.insurance.maryland.gov. You can also subscribe to our outreach calendar, and you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. You can watch some of our videos. So again, if there are no questions, thank you again for attending today's event. Again, this event is recorded and will be available on our website next week. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your week.